Good morning, team. Welcome back. I hope you're all good. Today we are looking at question 4. So before we get started, can you please make sure that you have your question 4 response from the 20th of January? The same as yesterday. If you do not have it, email me and I'll send you your question 4. Or if you didn't complete the question 4, email me and I'll send you a version that you can use for today's lesson. Pause the video and make sure that you have your question 4 response in front of you now, please. Okay, before we get into today's lesson, I just want to give you a reminder of the drop-in session that is taking place tomorrow, Wednesday, during your timetable lesson, so 11:15 and 12:15. It's a really good opportunity for you to come and speak to me for a couple of minutes, ask me questions about the assessment, gain any extra feedback, seek any advice. I'm going to be on the Teams call, which you have received a link for, through this whole hour. So please do drop in, say hello, and ask me any questions. It would be lovely to speak to some of you. All right, so today we're looking at question 4, like I mentioned. So please pause the video now and copy down the title, date, and LO, please. All right, if you're back, that means that you are ready to complete our do now. As I explained yesterday, our do now is going to be question 1. So let's have a look at this extract. Mr. Fisher lived alone in a small terraced house in the centre of town. He did not own a car and therefore preferred to do as much as he could of his weekend marking in the form room after school. Even so, there were usually 2 or 3 stacks of books and papers to take home on the bus. You need to now list 4 things from this part of the text about Mr. Fisher. Make sure that you do it in the way that I have taught you. Pause the video and complete the question 1 now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you are ready to make some corrections. Tick anything that's similar to the answers that I show on the screen. If you're not sure if you would get 4 marks, email me and I can double check your answers for you. So from this extract, we learned that Mr. Fisher lived alone. He lived in a terraced house, he lived in a small house, and all of these things here. And you also get credit for these answers here. So there's quite a broad number of options for this question 1. So pause the video, make any purple pen corrections that you need to ensure that your response is a 4-mark response. All right, so before we get into the WWWs and the EBIs for question 4, let's have a look at the examiner report. Just a reminder that the examiner report is a document produced by AQA after the exam series to summarise their comments about each paper. For question 4, they said that you shouldn't speculate about the statement. You need to interpret the statement based on the text that you have in front of you. So you shouldn't be making any kind of bold claims about what you think the text is about. You need to use the text that you have in front of you and the evidence to interpret the statement and to come up with your point of view. You should definitely cross-reference and link to other parts of the extract, but you don't want to focus too heavily on other parts that aren't the focus of the question. So definitely refer to a point at the beginning or at the end, but your analysis should be dominated by the focused lines of the question, not the link. They also said that you need to form your opinion of the statement before writing your response. Students do very well when they spend a little bit of time planning their opinion and planning their reasons for their opinion before they write. So, what did we do well? So, I saw a lot of good interpretation of the statement to develop reasons for and against the statement. I didn't see a lot of speculation from most of you. So what I mean by that is that most of you were able to come up with reasons to agree with the statement, and some of you were able to come up with reasons to disagree. Remember that there will always be scope to agree with a statement. You will never be able to fully disagree with a statement. But there may be some things that you disagree with, and that's great, and you can write about those. So what I would like you to do now is pause the video and copy this table. Once you've done that, go back to your question 4 response and copy your agree and disagree reasons into the table. So reasons for agreeing with the statement that you've used, copy here. Reasons that you disagree with the statement, copy here. If you didn't manage to write 4 paragraphs, this is your opportunity to generate some ideas and add them to your table in Purple Pen. So for example, if I wrote 2 paragraphs for agreeing with the statement, you now need to figure out another reason for maybe agree, and 1 for disagree, or 2 for disagree. Whatever you produced in your original question 4, this table needs to include 4 reasons. Pause the video and do this task in the yellow box for me now, please. Okay. So this table is a very beneficial resource to use before you plan your question 4. So when you've got the statement, what I would recommend that you do is you draw a little table like this into your exam sheet or on your piece of paper and quickly jot down your reasonings for agreeing and disagreeing. And that will really help you in your writing to stay focused. So what can we do better? The same as question 2, develop your explanation of quotes to clarify how it supports or challenges the statement. So this is the checklist that I gave you for question 4. It's very, very similar to question 2 and question 3. And again, the part that we need to work on is where we are analysing words or devices. Remember, for question 4, you can explore structure and language features. Each of the questions are marked individually, so you can use ideas and quotes from your previous questions on structure, so question 3, and language, question 2, in this response. So here are some structural features that you can look at. This obviously applies to question 3, but also question 4. If there is a new character, setting, event, mood, or atmosphere, the narrative voice or the viewpoint. So whose perspective of the situation are we hearing? For example, in Frankenstein, we start by hearing Walton's point of view, then we move on to hearing Victor's point of view, and then there is a shift where we hear the creature's point of view. And that undeniably aids our understanding of the text. We then have juxtaposition and contrast. We then have climax and anticlimax. So a climax is a turning point which solves the main conflict of the story or the extract. And an anticlimax is a turning point that is unsatisfying. So it doesn't solve the main conflict. The pivotal moment is an important key or vital moment. Arguably in Macbeth, you could say that the killing of Duncan was the pivotal moment for Macbeth. Pathetic fallacy, where the mood and the weather are together, they are linked. And flashback and flash forward. And then we have the language devices. Again, this is applicable to question 2, but also question 4. So associations and connotations of words, semantic fields, so words that are different but share the same meaning. Imagery, metaphors and similes, personification, alliteration, repetition. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is when the word sounds like the sound it's describing, so crash, bang, whack. Rhetorical questions, imperative, exclamation, short sentences, lists, and hyperbole, which is exaggeration. So these are all things that you can use and analyse to support your point of view. So if you're agreeing with a statement, can you identify any of these things that help support that statement? If you're disagreeing with a statement, can you identify any of these things that help you disagree with a statement? You need evidence to support your point of view, and these things form that evidence. So let's have a look at this example here. Moreover, there is a recognition that this section shows the effects of war on Alfred through his actions. When describing Alfred chasing the rat and catching it, the writer evokes how Alfred smashed the rat down and after had a moment of fleeting sympathy. The verb smash conveys the idea of brute force being used, which is unnecessary, which shows the frustration and anger Alfred has due to this war, as all these deaths may have been avoided, making the war unnecessary. The idea that the effects of war on Alfred are shown through his actions is seen earlier when Alfred chases after the rat due to pent-up anger. Overall, the writer describes the effects of war on Alfred through his actions as it depicts how war can make someone unstable. This is an excellent paragraph. Some of the phrasing could be clarified and be a bit clearer, but generally the explanation of how the quotes and how the text supports the statement about the effects of war on Alfred is really developed and really clear. This is another example. Firstly, I agree that the horror of the war had a dreadful effect. This is because he had to witness bits of men hooked up and hanging for all to see. The word hanging shows how awful the sight must be if they were just up for everyone to see, especially if they knew them. The idea of this dreadful effect was seen earlier in the text when Alfred was sitting alone as he was grieving his dead teammates and friends. Overall, the writer creates an image for us to see how much trauma it could cause someone even to witness one death. There's an evident difference between this response and this response. If I were to highlight all the times this person linked back to the effects of war through their analysis, so we have the verb smashed conveys the idea of brute force being used unnecessary, so they're explaining their device, and then they link it back to the effect that the war has had on Alfred, and then they continue to also do that here, and all the way to the bottom when they reinforce their overall point of view. This person, we have the word hanging, and it shows how awful the sight must have been, but there is no link back to how that supports the statement. And then they've done a little a link here, but again, no link back to how these have impacted Alfred. So there's an evident difference. So I'm going to show you how I would improve this one on the right now. So let me just come out of my full screen. So, firstly, I agree that the horror of the war had a dreadful effect. This is because he had to witness bits of men hooked up and hanging for all to see. I'm not going to change any of the phrasing, even though this quotation isn't embedded how I would like it to be. It's I'm not sure why it starts with this is because. I've never taught you how to do that, so you need to make sure that you correct that. But the focus of this EBI is to develop the explanation of the quote. So this is my explanation of the quote. The word hanging shows how awful the sight must be if they were just up for everyone to see, especially if they know them. I'm not going to change that, but I am going to add to it to clarify how this supports or challenges my statement. So, therefore, the war has had a detrimental impact on Alfred because I'm referring back to the statement, which is about the impact of war, and then I'm going to explain why I think that based on this analysis here. Therefore, the war has had a detrimental impact on Alfred because he can recall the maybe gruesome details of his surroundings, which have evidently resonated in his mind due to their horror. Done. So let's go back. So originally, this piece on the right, which was a great starting point for this student, had this much analysis. And I have added this section now in green. I've explained how this word or this structural feature or this device supports the statement. I've gone further. So now this one is starting to look a little bit more like this one. So what I would like you to do now is go to your question 4 response and improve your explanation of quotes in all of your paragraphs. Whether you've written 2 paragraphs or whether you've written 4 paragraphs, you need to do the exact same process as I just modelled for you. You need to develop your explanation of the quotes to clarify how it supports or challenges the statement. You can pause on this screen, or you can rewind and you can have the 2 model paragraphs and you can use that for inspiration. Pause the video and complete this task in the yellow box now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means that you are ready to submit your work. Again, this is just a reminder of how I would like things to be submitted. The same as yesterday, can you please submit your work underneath today's title and date? And also, I would like to see your purple pen corrections and any additions that you've made on your question 4 response. That is the most important part, so I can see that you've engaged with the feedback and you've applied it to your own work. I'll just clarify, I need to see a picture of your work from today's date and title, so the do now, and also your additions to your question 4 response based on the feedback. I look forward to seeing your excellent hard work, and I will see you in tomorrow's lesson.